Welcome to Chapter 15, Monopoly. In Segment 2 of Module 2, Profit Maximization for Monopoly, we will calculate the profit maximizing quantity. What will be covered in this segment? We start with a brief review of the output and the price effect of marginal revenue. Then I will introduce an example to calculate the output effect, the price effect, marginal revenue, marginal cost for different levels of output. And based on these calculations, you will learn how to find the profit maximizing output level to calculate the profit resulting from this output level. You learned already in the previous segment that a monopolist will reach his or her profit maximization quantity when marginal revenue and marginal costs are equal. Therefore, it is important to figure out what determines marginal cost and marginal revenue. Marginal cost is determined like in any other market as the difference in total cost of two consecutive production levels. I will cover this on the next slide. In contrast, marginal revenue is calculated differently than in a competitive market. Marginal revenue consists of two effects: the output effect and the price effect. Remember, the output effect results from the fact that if the monopolist increases production by 1 unit, he can sell 1 extra unit and revenue increases by the price. Therefore, the output effect equals the market price, which is very similar to a competitive market. Additionally, in a monopoly, we have the price effect. In order to sell 1 extra unit, the monopolist has to lower the price. This will hurt the monopolist's revenue. Therefore, the price effect is always negative. It is calculated by the price decrease times the units produced previously. I will demonstrate this to you in the following slides. The following table reflects the cost and revenue situation of a monopolist. Each row in this table represents one output level. It doesn't matter if it is a quantity supplied, produced, or demanded, because for a monopoly, we assume that a monopolist produces what he or she is planning to sell in this period. And we also assume that the monopolist would set the price to a level that the demanded quantity will match what the monopolist has produced. Let us start with the supply side, the cost side. In the left red column, you find total cost. If you want to calculate marginal cost for an output level of 1, you look at the total cost of 0, which was $80, and after producing 1 unit, the total cost increased by 22 to 102. This means the cost increase of 22 resulted from producing the first unit. In our case, this is the last produced unit. What if the monopolist produces 2 units? Then the total cost increased from 102 to 125. The difference is 23. Producing the last unit, the second unit, led to a cost increase of 23. This is the definition of marginal cost. In the same way, by calculating the differences of 2 consecutive output levels, you can calculate marginal costs for 3, 4, 5, and so on. Here we will cover how to calculate marginal revenue from the output and from the price effect. Let us assume the monopolist increased production from 10 to 11. What is the marginal revenue for a quantity of 11? We start with the output effect. Producing the 11th unit and assuming that the monopolist sells the 11th unit increases the revenue by the price the monopolist charges for it. The price the monopolist can charge is 32. If she charges 32, the demanded quantity will be exactly 11. That is what was produced. But in order to sell the 11th unit, the monopolist had to lower the price by $2 from 34 to 32. This will lower the revenue, not only of the last unit, but for all other produced units. This means you have to multiply the already produced units 10 by -2, which equals -20 for the price effect. You might ask, why do I have to multiply by 10 and not by 11? The reason is, for the 11th unit, and you can see that if you look at the output effect, we considered already the lower price. Therefore, we have to consider the price effect only for the 10 previously produced units. If we add up both effects, we get an overall marginal revenue of 12. This is how you can calculate marginal revenue using the output effect and the price effect. And this method shows to you that marginal revenue consists out of these two effects. Now I want you to take a piece of paper and calculate the marginal revenue for a quantity of 12. Calculate first the output effect and then calculate the price effect. And write the result down on your piece of paper. I will give you a little bit of time to accomplish this task. Okay, let's start with the output effect. Producing and selling the 12th unit led to extra revenue of $30. Therefore, the output effect is $30. But in order to sell the 12th unit, the monopolist had to lower the price from 32 to 30, which is a price decrease of $2. 2 times the previously produced units, 2 times 11 equals $22. If we subtract 22 from 30, we get marginal revenue, which is 8. The demonstrated method shows clearly the output effect and the price effect and how they accumulate to become the marginal revenue. But there is an easier way to calculate marginal revenue. This easier method uses a revenue to calculate marginal revenue, and it works pretty similar to calculating marginal cost. So first, we calculate the revenue for a production of 0. Price times quantity, 54 times 0 equals 0. Then we calculate the revenue for a produced quantity and a sold quantity of 1. 1 times 52 results in a revenue of 52. Calculating the marginal revenue of a production quantity of 1 means to figure out how much did the revenue increased because the monopolist produced the first unit. The revenue increased actually by 52. Let's assume the monopolist increases production further. The last produced unit is now the second unit. The revenue for 2 units is 50 times 2 and it equals 100. By producing the second unit and selling the second unit, revenue increased from 52 to 100 by $48. Therefore, marginal revenue is $48 for the second unit. You can use the same method to calculate marginal revenue from the revenue. This method is a little more efficient than the previous method, but it does not show the underlying reasons, the output effect and the price effect for marginal revenue. After you calculated marginal cost and marginal revenue, you can compare marginal revenue and marginal cost to find the optimum production level. We start with the output level of 1. Marginal revenue is 52, marginal cost are 22. Producing the first unit increased the revenue by 52, while total cost only increased by 22. It is a good idea to increase production further. Producing the second unit increased revenue by 48 because marginal revenue is 48, and total cost increased only by 23. Marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. We should increase our production further. Producing 4, marginal revenue is still greater than marginal cost. The same is true for 5, for 6, and at 7 we see marginal revenue equals marginal cost. We reached a profit maximum. The optimum quantity for the monopolist to produce is 7. Let us increase the production even further. If we increase the production to 8, we see marginal revenue is actually smaller than marginal cost. And if we increase further, this discrepancy becomes bigger and bigger. If marginal revenue is smaller than marginal cost, this means that the revenue increase for producing an extra unit is less than the increase in total cost, and therefore it does not make sense to produce an extra unit. The optimum is actually where marginal cost equals marginal revenue at a produced and sold quantity of 7. When you know that the optimum quantity is 7, you can calculate the maximum profit. You take the revenue at a production level of 7, which is 280, and you take total cost of a production level of 7, which is 255, and the difference between 280 minus 255 equals 25. The profit the monopolist makes if the monopolist produces the optimum production level is $25. If we calculate the profit for other production levels, we can actually double check our result. If the production is 8, revenue 304 minus total cost 284 equals 20. At a production level of 9, revenue 324 minus total cost 314 gives a profit of 10. In the same way, we can calculate the profit for all levels of output. And what you can see is that the profit maximizes at a production level of 7. You might wonder why at a production level of 6 we have the same profit. This is because we only considered full numbers. So for our example, the optimum output level might be somewhere between 6 and 7. But this is not relevant. We have an optimum output level of 7 here, which generates the biggest output of 25, and it does not matter that there is another equally high profit. What did you learn in this segment? You learned how to calculate the output effect and price effect of marginal revenue. You learned another, easier method to calculate marginal revenue. You learned how to calculate marginal cost for a monopolist, which is the same method than calculating marginal cost in a competitive market. You also learned how to find the optimal quantity to produce for maximizing the profit. And finally, you learned how to calculate profit from total cost and revenue.